Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. Welcome to the City of Hartford special committee meeting of the Planning, Economic Development, and Housing Committee, and also the Operation Management and Budget and Government Committee. Tonight we have the councilperson joining us. We have Councilwoman Rossetti, Councilman Jimmy Sanchez, Councilwoman Wildelise Bermudez, Councilman John Gale, and I'm Shirley Sturgeon, the chair of the committee. I also believe we're joined by Councilman TJ Clark. So we have one item on the agenda tonight, and that item is a communication from the mayor's office that was sent to the committee on March 9th. It's a communication from the Mayor Bronin with a company resolution that would authorize the approval of the 50-year land lease of the city property to Seven Summit Realty LLC for 1135, 1137, and 1161 Albany Avenue, and 425 and 426 Woodland Street. We are joined by the Economic Development Department uh, over here. Yep, Mr. Eric Johnson. And we're also joined also by the developer, Mr. Freeman. Eric, could you give a little presentation on the project, and then Mr. Freeman can go after you?
Sure. Thank you all for the time this afternoon. I will say this still continues to be a little weird to do these meetings telephonically. I will say that it probably means that the chair doesn't feel as hot as it normally does, but I still appreciate the urgency of the situation. This is a project that predates my tenure within the city of Hartford. It's been I think, a long-standing conversation that's taken place, not just with the community and council, but I think also with developers and council. What you have in front of you is a project that is being proposed by Seven Summits Development, which is a partnership of a subsidiary of Freeman Companies, headed by Rowan Freeman, who is the sole responder to an RFP that we put out earlier this year, actually last year, for development of the project. It has gone through the HRA process and is now before you for consideration. And basically, what is being proposed is kind of the extension of the town center concept that has long been talked about on Albany Avenue and Woodland. And what we are proposing is the construction of a mixed-use, approximately 80,000 square foot structure that will be a combination of retail, office, and residential uses, as been discussed, and it's included in your proposal, in your package. One of the core users that we've talked about potentially occupying that space is the health department. We're still working on the feasibility of that happening, which is one of the reasons why there's a joint committee meeting today. But we do think, as we try and not only try and revitalize the corridor, we're trying to figure out how to do some placemaking there. And this committee's approval is significant, and it will allow the developer to have tangible site control, which will allow him to complete some of the financing discussions that have been ongoing for the last 6 to 8 months. There's a presentation that I know has been shared prior, but Mr. Freeman is online and available, I guess, to circulate to go through the brief presentation that has been developed, and then after that, we're both available to take any questions about the project and our expectations.
Right. Thank you, Eric. If I can ask everyone to make sure you mute yourself so we don't have any feedback. Mr. Freeman, would you like to start your presentation?
Great, thank you. In a moment, I will share my screen so everyone could see the presentation I'm going to do. But I just wanted to start by introducing myself, give you a little bit of background, and then go into the presentation. So I am Rowan Freeman. I'm the president and CEO of Seven Summits Realty. which is the entity that will be undergoing this development. I've actually been involved with this development in one shape or one way or another for about 11 years, but I know there's been other activity on this site prior to my getting involved. We were involved when Sheldon Oaks teamed with another developer, Fluent, to get the site that was under Tom Deller's reign, and they were not able to perform. The site was subsequently given to Centerplan to try to develop. We were involved with Centerplan, did not become a reality. After Centerplan dropped out, I decided to pick up the project, and that was in 2016. I started having various conversations with different organizations, different community leaders, to kind of see what their thought process were, what were their hot button issues, what were they looking to see go here. Prior to that, there was a study that was completed by Amenta Emma. I think that was in the early 2000s or somewhere around 2005 to 10. I don't know if Glenn is on the phone to talk about that. And the study incorporated several different ideas. So after, I talked to all the community leaders, I decided I would take the challenge to move this project forward. And the reason why I'm trying to move this forward, although it's a very challenging project, is because I grew up in that community. I grew up 2 blocks away, right at the corner of Sterling Street and Homestead Avenue, at number 2 Sterling Street, overlooking Seal Test. I spent several years of my life there prior to going to college. So this project needs more than just an investment or and a normal project that I typically do. It means just kind of a way to give back to the community that I came from, and a way to kind of get the community to kind of jumpstart and get some economic vitality going there. And the way we want to do this is to do something that's done by a private developer, private investor that is not majority or led by public entities or nonprofits. Because when you do that, it's very difficult to attract other private developers to the area. So by doing this and get it to be successful, I think this will be a conduit for other developers to come in. And I think Eric would agree with that. So with that, I am going to share my screen with the presentation so everyone could see the same thing. Here we go. So can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this is just a cover slide to show you where the building is located, but I'll launch right into the presentation. Okay, great. So this is a partnership, even though Seven Summits is the lead developer and is leading the development and is responsible for the operational side and the administrative side of making sure this development takes place. This is a partnership between Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, the City of Hartford, LISC, Trinity Health, and CRDA, all of whom is having some kind of investment, not necessarily financial, but is investing in the project one way or another to make sure it goes forward. And without the combination of all these efforts, this project becomes more challenging. So, I like to look at this as a very transformational project. As I said, it's a catalyst to attract other developers into the neighborhood, right into the neighborhood. And you'll see later on where we talked about some of the other projects that are going on and how they complement each other. And I think, Denise Best, who's the chair of the NRZ, said it best. The redevelopment of Albany Woodland is a significant progressive piece to the revitalization of the neighborhood. And I agree with that statement very well, very much. So what you're looking at is a rendering of the building that we intend to construct. It's not an exact rendering because there are modifications that will happen as we design, but the building will look something like this. And the reason we have a building that looks like this is because we went all around the community in the neighborhood. We see what kind of buildings are there, and we try to model the building so that it looks like it fits in. We don't want to put a spaceship looking building there that looks different from everything. So we wanted to fit in, hence the building like this. We want it to be very pedestrian friendly. That's why we have a lot of windows on the front, on the first floor, so it invites people in. The edges along Albany Avenue and Woodland Street are very straight, so we could have relatable street and block dimensions. And the building is appropriately scaled to other buildings that are within that vicinity. So we're looking at this project from all different perspectives to make sure that we're meeting the criteria for all the different stakeholders that would have an interest here. You're looking here at a site plan of what the site development would look like. So north or to the left of your screen is Albany Avenue, that's north, and west is Woodland Street at the bottom of your screen. So the building would go along Albany Avenue and wraps along Woodland Street. So it has a lot of street frontage, and the parking would be somewhat screened in the rear of the building. We have two accesses. One, and the primary access would be on Woodland Street, directly opposite the access into Brazza Plaza. There's a traffic signal there now. And then the second access would only be an in, or right in from Albany Avenue, right out from Albany Avenue is that access on the east side of the building that goes onto Albany Avenue. So you can't leave the site and make a left onto Albany Avenue. You could only go right. So if you wanted to get back to Albany Avenue, you'd have to go down on the Woodland Street exit. We have some of the things that we know some folks in the community are worried about is putting in too much plantings, making the parking spaces too screened. That could provide a place for illicit activities or so forth. So we've taken that into consideration. We're putting in mostly low shrubs, easy to maintain landscape plantings are some of the things that we're considering. So the development program is a building area of 80,000 square feet over 4 stories. Each story will be 20,000 square feet. The top 2 stories will be residentials, studios, and 1 bedroom. There are 50 total apartment units there that we're proposing. The second floor would be an office or could be converted to residential, depending on what happens. But right now, we're looking at possibly putting the Health and Human Services space there. And the ground floor would be commercial, where it would be retail and office use. The primary reason why we're putting in studios and 1-bedroom apartments here is because this is not a great location for families with kids, especially young kids. Albany Avenue and Woodland Street is a very busy intersections. There are about 35,000 cars per day that combined between the two streets going by the site. So we don't think it would be appropriate to attract families here with kids. Certainly couples or young millennials that are working. We're trying to attract teachers, firemen. So the workforce, this is workforce housing, and municipal workers, so city workers, nurses or nurse interns at St. Francis. That's the demographics that we're looking to attract here. So this is an aerial view of the area itself. Top right, which is southeast, is where the site is located. And you could see the building is right up against Albany and Woodland. And the church, King's Chapel Church, is right behind it. To the west, directly across the street, you have the post office, Holland Bennett office building on the shopping plaza. And then to the north, you have two mixed-use buildings similar to ours, both I think 3 or 4 stories with commercial on the front, so they're very similar to ours. And diagonally across the street, you have the Artist Collective. So you could see our building fits in perfectly in this location, creates a kind of town center feel. It anchors the intersection, and it kind of brings everything together, and it complements everything that's going on there in terms of we have offices, we also have offices, we have retail, there's already retail there. They're residential above commercial, that's what we're proposing. So it's a very complementary use in terms of what we're proposing. The benefits to the community is something that we take very seriously. We have looked at what all the benefits would be, and some of them are, we're bringing an urgent care facility here that will provide access to different forms of healthcare instead of the traditional healthcare that we have there. Health and Human Services will also be one of those different access that we're providing, although the urgent care facility is separate from that. We're looking to bring some kind of a financial institution. So all the banks and the financial institutions that we're discussing financing and debt service with currently, we're also tying that to them putting a branch here and also doing some kind of financial education and possibly a mortgage center. So that's still a ways down the road, but just know that those are the conversations we're having because we think these are the services that are sorely needed in the community. We're bringing in about 80 to 100 office jobs, 60 to 100 retail jobs. You know, I've had a history of collaborating with different entities, different community leaders in the community. I know most everybody there, or all the leaders. I've done several different meetings, so I'm very familiar and I have no problem communicating with anyone. So that should make this project viable. We're looking to attract some kind of a sit-down or family dining restaurant, not necessarily fine dining, but somewhere in the middle where you could go sit down and have good meal service. I think that's sorely lacking in this community, so it'd be great to bring that there. And of course, we'll be doing some traffic improvements, especially at the driveway across from Bronza Plaza. We've created a Facebook page for this project, and the Facebook page has generated a lot of comments and a lot of interest. And we've actually signed a lease through the Facebook page from somebody who saw the project being up. We can't sign any more lease. The reason we can't sign any more lease is we should not have signed the lease we did, because we don't have site control, so we can't sign not a lease and a letter of intent for a property or a project that we don't yet have control of. So we've told everyone that they need to hang on until site control happens, and we'll move that forward. And of course, you know, Eric is here, so you know the city supports the project 100%. And then we're also are eligible for brownfields grant funds, but we'll have to see where that is. So we have some definitive economic visions here. We want to make this destination so it's not underutilized. Right now, it's very underutilized. And we also want some of those 35,000 cars that are driving by the site to see something that they can use as a convenience as they're driving home or driving from to work. They could stop and say, oh, I could go there and pick something up really quickly. So that's one way to attract folks to the community. And I think this is also going to help to bring up the safety of this community by the visibility and the activities that will be around here. we're trying to bring services that are not yet in the community that's sorely needed. I've spoken about some of those, such as the sit-down restaurant, and the institution, financial institution. So that's our primary focus, those kinds of services. The urgent care facility, those are the things we're looking at. We are taking a lot of pride in the buildings as much as we're trying to keep our costs down. What's important to us, we want a building that looks great, that enhances the community. So that's something that we're putting a lot of effort and emphasis in. And you could see that from the graphics that we've showed you. So there's been a lot that has happened in the community, and we think this project will be a catalyst will also be a catalyst for other things to come. So the Route 44 safety improvements is what you've seen here, where it's currently taking place from Olmsted Avenue all the way down. I think it's to Barton Street, or down by the Y. So all that is currently taking place and is almost over. We also have Westbrook Village that's on the way. They've just gotten their fourth round of tax credit funding. So that project is very active. They're about to complete their demolition. University of Hartford has their Performing Arts Center right at the corner of Albany and Woodland. We have the new Hartford Public Library right across the street. The MLK School is currently on their reconstruction, and that should be completed in August. Our site is where you have the bullseye. And then Sheldon Oak is also doing new development about a half a mile to the east of us on Albany Avenue. So there's a lot of positive things going on there. And I think this project will be in a position to bring it all together, given how central it is and how vital this piece of parcel is, and because it's been vacant for so long. Our schedule, we are a little bit behind, but the schedule is still germane. We're still hoping that we could get out of the city process and get site control by this summer, so we could finalize our financing in the fall and potentially be in construction sometime this fall. If not, what will happen is everything will get pushed about 3 or 4 months, and construction will end up starting in March of 2021. So where are we today? We have spoken to St. Francis. You've seen it in the paper. That was inadvertent. That was not meant to be out to the public, but it's already out. So they have committed verbally to us for 4,000 square feet for an urgent care facility on the first floor. The Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Trinity Health, and LISC has partnered and has verbally committed funding to the project. They're talking about $4 million at the moment, but until we get it inked, we're not sure what it will be, but at the moment, that's where they are. We're talking to several banks. We have banks that have committed to doing the debt for the project with us. We want a bank that's going to say, okay, we want to be a real partner. We want to put a branch here, and we'll provide financial education to the community, free financial education, and possibly a mortgage center for folks in the community. I told you about the signed LOI we have, which is a positive. So that shows you that there's interest in that location. And I think this is one of those locations where if you build it, they will come. But I don't think we have to take that approach, because I honestly think that once we get all our city permits, we will be able to attract tenants to move the project forward. So the tenant may be, the building may be fully leased before we go to construction. We also have multiple retailers that we've been talking to that have expressed interest. And I think they're all just waiting to see what happens with the disposition of the property. And I've told you about the Facebook page that's been generating a lot of comments. You could go on Facebook. If you go on Hartford Dwellers, it's there. and you could read the comments for yourself where people are excited. We've gotten a lot of private emails through that page about the project, so I'd encourage you to go there and take a look. So thank you for listening. I welcome your support for the project, but I'll be happy to take your questions right now.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman, and thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Mr. Johnson, for doing this. I'm now going to open up the floor to any of the council persons who would like to ask any questions. Please remember that we also have another committee meeting right after this joint committee meeting, so our time is going to be limited. So any council person who would like to ask any questions, please unmute yourself and
I have
ask
a quick question. Quick question. And thanks. Great presentation. And I mean, I would be, as a lifelong Hartford resident, be thoroughly excited to see something happen on that property. And, you know, just the work that down the road at the Housing Authority for over the years. Really no thought to any 2 bedrooms, not for families, but for, you know, a lot of people, if you're talking about people who want to share. You know, I know if I was to share with a, you know, a roommate, if you're young or old and you want to have 2 bedrooms, is there any thought to that? Or is it just what the funders will, you know, what banks will want to fund? Is that something? And that's all I have to say.
Right. So great question. I think we've given a lot of thought to the unit mix. The units are going to be priced in such a way that it will be affordable for younger entry-level employees coming into the marketplace and for the demographics that we're looking for. The problem with making a 2-bedroom unit is even if they want to share, economically, it makes the project more challenging to get the extra space that you're not paying the equivalent more in rent to cover. And also, I mean, I think we're really concerned about putting in 2 bedrooms to attract families there because you can't tell somebody they can't come here. So you have to be open about who you can rent to. And so you have to take every application seriously. So we really are concerned about the safety of kids at this intersection because there's really nowhere to play for those kids if we attract the kids here. And so, and then you have to think about the tenant mix. So, you know, if you have a lot of younger tenants or tenants who are single, no kids, and you have 2 kids that are running around all the time, making a lot of noise, I mean, that could become very problematic. So we think about those things. I have a 5-year-old, so I know how active and energetic they are. And so I would like to avoid that. And then also, the financially, to get the banks to service the debt, we have to do an appraisal on the entire property. So they would take that into consideration, the unit mix, and it would be a demerit or a deduct for us if we have the 2 bedrooms in the development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, Chair.
Go ahead, Councilman Gale.
Thank you. John Gale here. Mr. Freeman, first off, comment on the name, 7 Summits. I'm assuming this is a reference to 7 summits that you have conquered that have nothing to do with Hartford, but have to do with other things.
Yes, it's because I've climbed the 7 highest mountain in each of the 7 continents. And Mr. Gale, I think it was easier to do the 7 Summits Challenge than it is to do this project.
Well, good for you. I knew you were a heck of a climber, and that's wow, that's quite a feat. So that's
Thank you.
And a homegrown boy. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great stuff. In your conversations with the city, and some of my questions may implicate Mr. Johnson here and some of the development services folks. Have you guys discussed, and not mind you that I think it would be any issue for you, but whenever we're doing these projects, we always talk about community benefits agreements. So I'm wondering, whether you've had these discussions at all with development services at this point.
Yes, we have had several of those discussions. Eric could go into the specifics. I think he's still on, so he can get into the specifics. But yes, I think every project the city does, community benefits is a big part of the negotiations and the term sheet. But we have outlined what we think our community benefits are and what our commitments will be, and I think the city is supportive.
Thank you.
Eric, let me
That's
just ask
great.
Mr. Friedman if he could just take his presentation down so we can see each person as they're speaking. Back to
And that's actually a great that's a great segue then to my next question, which is for Director Johnson and his staff. Do we have a term sheet for this particular project? And can we, if we don't have one, because I didn't see one, can we expect one before we're asked to vote on it?
Can you guys hear me? I'm just want to make sure I'm not. So yes, to Mr. Freeman's point, there will be an expectation for community benefits. I think it's important, at least in this piece, to understand as Freeman Company, while Freeman Company is a minority firm, they are still required to comply with all the community benefits that include WB and MBE participation, and their status as a prime contractor does not absolve them from that. So that's an important to note. Secondly, in terms of a term sheet, we do have one that's been out there that we will circulate. You'll have it tomorrow.
So following up on that term sheet, and mind you, Chair, I'm not sure we should pass this out of committee until we've had an opportunity to see the term sheet and perhaps discuss it. But when we vote on this, are we, at that point, is that the last time council will touch this particular project, as in, if we agree to allow the city to enter into a 50-year ground lease with this, are all the terms then are going to be negotiated according to the term sheet by the administration and 7 summits here?
That has been the practice that the cities has followed with, at least in my tenure, with the Dono project and also with Park and Main. So I believe that is our expectation is that we would follow the same process, which is why we're happy to have these conversations as warranted to make sure that you, as the elected body, we can answer any questions as possible. I would be remiss if I didn't say that, like all these things, some of the terms are going to be a little flexible because we can't predict how ultimately things will be financed. And what we are presenting you is what we believe the project will be. And then anything that's a significant departure from that, we would be obligated to come back to council.
Well, certainly, let me tell you, I love the project. I'm totally on board with the project, but I do want to make sure that we have some understanding. And one of the things I'm particularly concerned with and looking for to look at the term sheet to understand better is what the pilot payment is going to be to the city and how that pilot might change over the years. And one of the things that I'm pretty sensitive to and reflecting back on, and I think all council should be, we apparently entered into a deal with Hartford 21 before the tenure of this council that fixed their yearly payment to the city. I think for the term of their 50-year land lease, without any consideration for cost of living, without any consideration for inflation, without any consideration for the ability to discuss these things. And upon reflection now, I think, at the time, I'm sure everybody thought these were great ideas, but I think upon reflection, it may be that when we're entering into these very long-term things, we need to see that there's some ability to revisit at different points or have some formulaic application. we clearly want to see the developer be successful. We clearly want to make sure things are set at a point where the developer can get his financing. But as time goes on and people benefit, and certainly we would want the city to also benefit. Anyway, that's my comment on that.
No, sure. Well, again, we'll share the term sheet that we developed, and just to respond to that really briefly, again, we want to try and do is be consistent with the logic that we've done, at least during my tenure, where we try and give a significant abatement of property taxes during the construction and initial lease-up period, just because of the economic risk there. And then in order to support the economics going forward, we do a percentage of gross revenues. That way, as the project does better, as everyone expects that rents will go up, the city gets a percent of gross revenues, and then there's a floor that's established, though, that regardless of performance, the city also always gets a defined pilot payment amount. But again, those details are outlined in the term sheet, and again, are consistent with what we've done at Park and Main and also in Dono, where it's a percentage of gross revenues with a floor after a significant discount during the construction period, where it's difficult to contribute towards a pilot when no revenue's been generated.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Eric, let me ask you, so would we be able to get what is your time in trying to get us that term sheet?
We should have it to you by tomorrow afternoon. There's a term sheet that we have in draft form with the developer, and we can circulate that.
Any other questions, council members?
Motion for favorable recommendation.
Second.
Great, thank you. So we have a quorum, if I didn't say that. So any more discussions?
I mean, I'm not opposed to the project, but I'm a little unclear.
Okay, John,
John?
no, a little bit. Go ahead, John.
You can hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, sorry. I'm not opposed to the project, but and I'm not opposed to moving it forward, but we're moving it forward without ever having seen the term sheet. So I'm just a little concerned that we ought to have perhaps the ability to talk to the director. Maybe we want to negotiate something. I don't know, but
This not. Go ahead, Councilman.
No, through you, Madam Chair, I was just going to say to Councilman Gill's point, I understand that we have not received the term sheet yet. However, passing this out of committee allows us to move forward with this. And if we're not satisfied with what the draft of the term sheet looks like when it's received to us on tomorrow afternoon, we still have time to have discussion with the director and the developer to make sure that it is to our liking, so we ultimately can pass it.
Agreed.
Exactly. Thank you so very much, Councilman Majority Leader. John, is that okay with you?
yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, great. So can I do a roll call?
Yes.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Thank you.
Thank you
The
very much.
resolution passed. And before I would say to you, John, before we definitely vote on this, it'd be great to get that term sheet so we can ask any other questions. But let me just take point of privilege, and that is saying that I know about really bad about 2 blocks from this development, and I want to thank Mr. Freeman, and I want to thank Eric so very much to take up the mantle on this project, because this project has, we've got people come in and said we will do the project, and nothing has been done in over 30 or 40 years for this site in Upper Albany. So I want to thank Mr. Freeman for stepping up. I want to thank Eric, Mr. Johnson, for his leadership in getting this project to where it is. So I'm going to take my time to thank everyone. And so since we have a favorable vote from the committee to refer this back to the council with the understanding that we will get a term sheet in the next day or so to ask for a question before the next council meeting.
This is Glenn Gathers. Thank you, council members.
Right. It's time. I'm going to close out the special committee for planning, economic development, and management and budget. So thank everyone for joining us. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader,
Yes, Madam Chair.
it's your turn. I don't believe Councilwoman or our Council President is with us tonight. So we're going to be going to your committee meeting now?
Yes, we will go right into the committee. It looks like we have a quorum. I'm just going to pull up the agenda.
So is this the OMB now?
Yes.
And where would I find the agenda? Was this in an email to us at some point?
Yes, everybody have received it.
John, you need to talk a little bit louder, John. I can barely hear you.
Oh, sorry. Boy, that's never been a problem for me.
John, do you need me to email it to you? John, you need me to email it to you?
Please, that would be great.
Can you CC me also?
Sure.
Is that better, Shirley?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
Don't forget, guys, we're still live on channel 97.
Well, the public gets to watch the sausage being made.
All right, gentlemen, I just forwarded you the agenda.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
Received.
All right. So I would like to call to order this special OMBGA committee meeting for today, May 18th, 2020. For the viewing audience, thank you very much for attending our special OMBGA committee meeting. We just had a special PEDH and OMBGA committee meeting, and it is a special meeting because we are starting at a later time than as published in our council rules. I am your co-chair for the OMBGA committee, Councilman TJ Clark, the city majority leader. I am joined by Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, Councilman John Gale, and also Councilman Jimmy Sanchez. And with further ado, if there's no objection by our committee members, I would like to place all of the three items in one bucket since they are budget appropriations. So I'll read it for the public. It is an ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the Wish Elementary School. That's item number 4 on the council agenda. Item number 5 is the same thing for public improvements to the E.B. Kennelly School and also to the Betances Early Learning Lab School as well. So it doesn't look like there's anybody that is represented from the mayor's office to speak on these particular items. But if council members are familiar with the budget appropriations that we passed for earlier this year for the Burrs Latino Academy, these are for these three schools are the next schools that are on the list slated to be renovated by the city of Hartford and the Hartford Public Schools Board of Education. So if there is no object, yes, sir, Councilman Gale.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I reflect that if I'm not mistaken, each one of these projects is about a $40 million project. I think one might be just slightly under 40 and the other two are just slightly over 40. So it sounds as though there's a template for upgrading the school and they have a a pretty good handle on what would be expected for the costs of it. And what I don't remember what the Burns numbers were. I don't know if the chair remembers. Are they roughly in the same? Are we talking the same order of magnitude?
It is around the same magnitude, and also to remember that the three schools that we passed previously for the budget appropriations for renovation, and these three schools that are on our agenda are going to be reimbursed by the state for 95%. And so the city will be on the hook for 5%. And there has not been a school project that has gone over budget as we speak. So knock on wood.
I can do that. And I'm also assuming that these, because they've come to us from the administration, that these are consistent with the superintendent's plan. I know the superintendent has a 5-year plan for both school consolidation, renovations, et cetera. And I'm assuming that these are just the next 3 schools that fall into that category.
Yes, yeah, these are the 3 schools that fall into the category. And if you, we're all familiar with the district model of excellence. And if you remember, Councilman, I think it was last year we passed the ordinance for us to apply to the state for the 95%, and we had a certain timeline that was dictated by the state for us to apply to try to get enough schools in so that we can get the 95% reimbursement.
And these fall into the same category. We got to get these in within a certain time.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, I think the timeline is by the end of either 2021 or 2022. But these times, so there's after we do our work, still has to go back to the city, the Board of Ed, and then with Arcadis ONG to get the RFPs out, to get all the other necessary information out to the construction world to start working on these projects, and also working with the Office of School Construction and Grants as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no other questions. If you're ready for a motion, I'd be happy to make one.
All right, the chair can entertain a motion.
I'd move to send it back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
And proper motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Councilman's
I support it, but I'm an ex-affiliate.
Thank you.
We love you.
No further objection. This item is going to be moved for the favorable recommendation back to council for the next meeting. And the last item is the mayor's budget message and recommended general fund budget and capital improvement program ordinance of appropriations for general fund ordinance concerning appropriation in the capital improvement fund ordinance in tax levy on list of October 1st, 2019. So this is just simply the budget appropriations that we are now deliberation with.
Right. So are we putting that off, or what do we need to do on that?
Yeah, I think it essentially just remains in committee.
It just remains in committee. Right?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Until we will reconvene. So
exactly. Okay.
And just for the benefit of the maybe Chair, you want to go over for the benefit of the public, since we're doing a little bit of a different budget session than we typically do, where we would have public hearings with all department heads coming forward, and the public would get to hear our questions and see the answers, et cetera. You may want to just discuss
this is unseen times. So for the viewing audience, typically for the budget and the budget proceedings and the department hearings are done conveyed by the operations management and budget committee. And so since this year, unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we will not be having doing our normal process. we are still doing the work, but we just are not meeting in person. This item looks like will be postponed until the Operations Management and Budget Committee will pick this item up after this upcoming council meeting will be recessed, so that now we will go into our budget talks amongst our colleagues.
Um, Mr. Majority Leader, you may want to mention that due to us not doing the question and answering with the different department, they made presentations which are posted to our website.
Thank you, Madam Councilwoman. You have received all the presentations from the various departments. We are now also getting questions together to send out to the various department heads from my respective colleagues on the dais. And those questions will be sent to myself and Council President Mally Rosado, who is also the co-chair of this committee. And all the information relative to the budget and the departmental presentations are accessible on the council's website for your reading. And if you have any questions, or if you would like to have any input, providing additional input for those that were not able to attend the budget public hearing, please feel free to reach out to myself and the rest of my colleagues, and we will take those questions and recommendations under consideration as we comb through this budget to see what is it that we may possibly move around.
Request the committee to adjourn if there's no other business.
So I just need a motion to postpone this item.
Oh, okay. Motion to postpone the item.
All right.
Second.
Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon has moved to postpone this item. Councilman John Gill has seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor to postpone?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. The item is postponed. And now, with no other further business, this committee meeting is now adjourned.
Right. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
See you all in 30 minutes or so.
See you guys in what? In 30 minutes, right?
Take
I'll
care.
be looking the same.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Take care.
Right.
Take care, everybody.